Eric, athletes are being warned that they could be punished for criticizing China or making political statements during the Beijing Olympics next month. The warning comes as China faces intense scrutiny over its human rights record. But officials in Beijing say they are enforcing the rules set by the International Olympic Committee. The IOC Athletes Commission guidelines state, quote, no kind of demonstration or political, religious, or racial propaganda is permitted in any Olympic sites, venues, or other areas. Let's bring in Dr. John Carlos, bronze medalist in the men's 200-meter race in the 1968 Summer Olympics in Mexico City. Also took part in that historic, iconic protest during the medal ceremony with fellow American Tommie Smith, who took home the gold in that race. Dr. Carlos, nice to have you with me again. What do you think about China's warning, and should athletes adhere or not?
Well, first of all, let me say thank you. It's an honor to be on your show again, to share with you. As far as the demonstration go in Japan and China, Beijing, excuse me, it's a restriction that's put on them by this particular Rule 50 that they have with the International Olympic Committee. It appears to me that the curtain or the drape have been dropped relative to no political endeavors whatsoever involved in the Olympic Games, because this is a clear cut of political oversight as well as economic oversight. And when they tell the athletes that, as America said, we will hold our diplomats back, we will boycott the games as far as our diplomats, while America should have took the step forward and disallowed the whole team from going. But to send the young athletes there that might have humanitarian concerns just here in the United States, not to mention what's the atrocities going on in China, for them to be voiceless, to not be able to make a statement or to make a gesture concerned about humanity is absolutely absurd. And once again, I'll tell you that the United States and the International Olympic Committee need to get their acts together. They're putting a tremendous amount of pressure on these young athletes.
I want to talk about that pressure in a second, but I want to listen right now to Representatives Michael Waltz, a Republican of Florida, and Jennifer Wexton, a Democrat of Virginia, on a bipartisan push to halt taxpayer funds to the International Olympic Committee. Let's take a listen.
We don't think the taxpayers, American taxpayers, should be subsidizing the IOC as a 501c4, which means it's a social welfare organization, to then turn its back on these types of atrocities and put our athletes in a position of threatening their safety, but also having to choose between competing or turning a back on their values.
Yeah. And it's exceedingly clear that they have moved away from their original mission of sport and companionship and also of human rights.
So they agree with you that basically the IOC should not be doing business with China. And you mentioned the pressure that this puts on the athletes. Tell us more about that.
Well, first of all, I commend those two politicians for bringing that legislation about. It's long overdue. And I might tell the politician, the young lady, that this is not new, current situation for the International Olympic Committee in terms of bringing politics into the games. Politics has always been into the games, but they like to put the curtain up when they feel it's to their advantage. And when it's to their disadvantage, they like to curtain it up again. Now, relative to the pressure that's being put on the various athletes, they're censoring their text messages, they're censoring their telephones. The International Olympic Committee is telling them, don't bring your computers, don't bring your phones, because you will be censored. This is worse than actually being in the military, going to a Middle East country in a war zone.
What you're talking about, because the athletes and all attendees are required to download a health tracking app, but according to a Canadian cyber security group, I believe it's called Citizen Lab, that app has security flaws, and there is apparently a list of political keywords and a feature to report politically sensitive content. So, listen.
Well, we're walking right into a country that's known for, hacking and so forth like that. So it'd be no problem for them to hack into any gadget that they have on internet or what have you, to find out what's going on and what the thoughts of the various athletes are and to hold them up. I'm just saying, shame, shame, shame on the International Olympic Committee that they would put these kids in the middle of it, and they're still not man enough or strong enough to make the right decision and realize that humanity is what brought these games about altogether.
In the first place.
Pierre Coubertin would be upset and be ashamed of them right now.
So what should happen with the IOC? I mean, without the IOC, you don't have the games, and these, you know, all these world-class athletes want to participate. What should happen with the IOC?
Well, you know, I think first of all, the United States putting that pressure on, economic pressure on the International Olympic Committee would make them start to take this thing a little more seriously. They seem to think that they're a dictatorship and they can do whatever they want, whenever they want, to whomever they want. And like I spoke last time, they are at the end of the road, and the ceiling is falling in. Like they say, the house is on fire, and they better wake up to it and try and resolve these issues as quickly as they can. They can't keep sticking it under the rug.
So do you think that there needs to be a reorganization at the top there with the IOC?
Well, I don't think it needs reorganization at the top. I think their bylaws are outdated. I think they need to reconstruct their bylaws and look at themselves in terms of where we are in modern times.
Got it. Dr.
Yeah,
John.
we can put a new head on, but if the body is still the same, the snake still is just as poisonous, no matter who the head is.
I got that analogy, definitely. Dr. John Carlos, thank you very much. I'm sure I'll see you again on some issue where we need your voice applied to. Thank you so much. Take care, sir.
Well, thank you, and you have a great day as well. God bless you.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.